When your ex tells you to move out while she's on a work trip because the guy she cheated on you with is moving in, you get very creative moving out. I had originally posted this as a response to a question in our/unethical pro-life tips and was told that this would be appreciated here. Enjoy? I did this to an ex who asked me to move out while she was on a work trip and told me she was coming back with her new boyfriend. We were still together when she left. I got these little noisemakers, battery-powered ones the size of a quarter that emit sounds at just the right volume that you aren't sure if you really heard it, so quiet that two people could be sitting in an average-sized room and while one can barely hear it the other wouldn't hear a thing. They last ages, and fit perfectly in light fixtures and in wall outlets. I got a box of 20 of them for like $100 on eBay and got so creative all over the house, her car, I even hid them in a boat her father got her, rich family, and she grew up sailing. Now these little bastards make a noise at complete random intervals, could be minutes, could be hours, could take a whole day off. They cycle noises like children laughing, a dying breath as they called it, a whistle, scratching noises, some other ones I can't remember but you get the idea. It was so unpredictable it was near impossible for someone to just figure it out. Months go by, I get a new place, get my life back up. Now we had a few friends in common and one of them I kept up with. They were kinda sour about how she ended things but they had grown up together and kept up the friendship, loosely talking and catching up on occasion. I never really asked about her, but one day we get to talking and he's wanting to prank some friends on a camping trip so I tell him about the noisemakers. As I'm telling him about them he slowly starts making this face, like he's gradually losing his shit. He's got this huge grin on his face and asks me, "You put these in, X, shit didn't you?" And when I admit he starts laughing hysterically. Turns out her new boyfriend had only lasted a few months, and had left telling her that he couldn't handle whatever was going on with them and their mental states. Turns out for a while they had both heard things and sometimes only one would hear them, which gave the illusion that something really fucked with them was going on in their heads at different times. They couldn't figure it out and eventually he wanted out completely, and having run down all the crazy list of shit people who are hearing voices would think ended it believing he had been infected with some brain worm the government was putting in vaccines or something like that. It was amazing, I hadn't expected to hear anything about it. I rode the train for weeks. When it went away I got another hit of that high. She moved out, told her parents she didn't want the house and to give it to her brother or sell it. Wouldn't tell them why. I always tell people who ask about her that I hold no grudge, and don't tell them the part where I totally fucked with her so bad I overshot the got her backstage and hit the blissful state of satisfied with my work. My wife knows this story by heart because it's her favorite one to tell. Want to be clear on a couple things that came up in the other post. In some ways I'm not too proud of this, it was a long time ago and I was in a really dark place. The whole event just tipped me and I responded in a no fucks to give state the best I could, by just being a menace. She also did it all through a short impersonal email that just sucked ass. I'm not saying that's all an excuse, just some context. Also, the house was purged of the devices after she left. I let her brother in on it because they weren't close at all and he lived with their mom most his life. We were close because we gamed together and he was able to find all but 2 of them. He ended up using them for other pranks for a long time. Ps. As far as the original noise chips I got, they were a very simple board build I got from some guy on eBay ages ago, so I can't track down a direct link and I don't think he is on eBay anymore. I'm seeing a lot of references to one called the Annoyatron on ThinkGeek and it sounds like it was probably the influence behind the ones I got or vice versa. I encourage anyone who wants them to hunt on eBay or even Etsy. They were pretty simple and I can imagine someone out there still makes them. Also I would say see if you can't make them yourself. There might be some DIY guides for it out there. I'll see what else I can find. PS2, apart from being the best console ever made, I found something that honestly in my opinion trumps the ones I had. This is a small unit that lets you record 10 seconds of your own audio. Which is honestly pretty cool because you could make the sounds and voices more personal to your victim. There was a device called the Annoyatron that would do something like that, but it emitted a high-pitched chirp, so high most people can't consciously hear it, only it's there and it's annoying, but since it's just a tiny chirp and it's not often it's hard to track down. When I was in college my roomie was a real jerk, and one thing he liked to do was to come in the middle of the afternoon and nap, and he insisted the room be absolutely silent during his nap and would go ballistic if I made any sound at all, like typing. So I could be in the room but I couldn't do any work. I was a computer science student, so I had to type to do schoolwork. This was very annoying because it meant that often I wouldn't be able to be in my dorm room if I had some downtime and wanted to work on my homework. I realized my programmable calculator could make sounds like the Annoyatron, so I wrote a little program on it that would emit a half-a-second chirp at 14,000 Hz every 5 minutes. When I'd come in and find him napping, I would start the program, put it in my desk drawer, and quietly leave. 2 weeks later he moved out. Imagine that. Reminds me of the story of a lady who was going through a divorce. She spent her last night in her home eating a nice seafood dinner, and then taking the scraps, shrimp peels, fish bones and pieces, etc., and putting them inside of the curtain rods in each room. The next day she moved out and the husband's new girlfriend moved in shortly thereafter. And then the smell began. They couldn't locate the source, so the husband eventually gives the wife the house as part of their settlement. Then he packs up all his shit and moved out. Packed up everything. Even the curtain rods. They kicked out my sister-in-law when she came out, so I forced them to sell the same house. My sister-in-law came out as a trans woman when she was 18. My wonderful in-laws kicked her out of the house then and there. They told her to leave the house and threw her out at 8 p.m. with no money or even any documents, and her father took the car keys from her too. She had to walk 8 miles to get to our place. She was crying and we took her in. This is horrible behavior, but my husband and I would have just cut them off if it was all they did, but they doubled down. They refused to hand over any of the documents and my brother-in-law had to go over and barge into their house to get them. They also cleaned up all the money in a joint account. She had saved up $8,000 working part-time all through high school. They took the money and also sold her car, which was in their name. They were trying to ruin her life as much as they could. My father-in-law is a small-time businessman and his biggest account was supplying my employer. I had helped him get the contract and it was very lucrative for him. My employer was a family business and they treated long-term employees more like family than as employees. I was talking to my boss about what happened. He told me that if I could find someone within 5% range of the price my father-in-law offered, they would make the switch. My father-in-law offered us really great rates. He was very good at his job, but he had fucked up the contract because even though we always bought from him, we weren't obligated to buy from him. We could switch suppliers anytime, but he got complacent and assumed we wouldn't switch suppliers. It took me 6 months of painful searching to find a supplier who could replace him and get us great rates. This was not a major part of my duties and I had to put in way more hours than normal to find the damn supplier, but when I did find them, I waited for a month before informing my boss. See, my in-laws had been planning to do major renovation for a long time and it involved tearing down a major portion of their house. I waited until the renovation work had truly started before informing my boss. We started to get supplies from the new supplier the next month itself. It crushed his business. It fucked his unit economics and he had to scramble to find new customers. They ended having to sell their house to save the business and they didn't get a good rate for it because the house was well half torn down when they sold it. My in-laws did try to get money from my brother-in-law, but he told them to fuck off. My father-in-law is a decent businessman and he did crawl his way out of the hole they dug for themselves, but even 8 years later they still haven't bought a new house. I have heard they are still sour about what happened. I mean, I was just doing my job and if they had just kicked her out, they would still have the house. Hey. I love you. Thanks for watching. I hoped you enjoyed this Reddit audio story. It would mean a lot to me if you could like and subscribe, or better yet, leave a comment about one of the stories. Thanks and I hope you have a wonderfully fantastic day. XOXO.